Well, we have some very good people for that position, and I think we have some very good people. We're down to, I think I maybe in my own mind have somebody that I like, but I deal with Scott and I deal with Howard, and we're dealing with a lot of people actually that are going to be involved in that decision ultimately. It's a very important decision, as we see. I got a bad recommendation when I went with Jerome too late. He's too late.
What we've had under Fed Chairman Powell is a number of compliance and trading issues that occurred a couple of years back. And so it showed a lack of oversight, in my view. Now we have a situation where, if true, it's a pretty serious error of omission to try to claim two primary residence. We don't know if it's true. And so I guess I would say that if it is true, I think the president is within his rights, but it would seem to me even better if the Fed chairman would step up, or Lisa Cook would take herself out of the mix, because this is distracting to the markets. It's not necessarily, I know a lot of people are conflating this issue with Fed independence, but if there was fraud committed, I don't think, and particularly in an environment where you are held to a much higher standard and your ethics really go unchecked, I would say I'd rather see the problem get fixed and worry about the politics later. It's a little uncomfortable, and but we've had movements around all of the Fed policies that we've seen over the last 5 years, where the Fed chairman has pivoted. He said one thing at one time, he waited too long, he didn't wait long enough in the last fall, and so I think these things end up getting kind of smoothed out over time. And I think what you have today is the hedge funds trading around the headlines, and we even saw that yesterday in the stock market. So this will soon be in the rearview mirror. The market is waiting for Nvidia. That's why it's muted. Really, at the end of the day, stocks trade off of earnings. Nvidia reports tomorrow. I think that's going to be pivotal, and we'll all be hanging over the edge of our terminals to see what happens. But that's really what matters to stocks in the long run. In the short run, the hedge funds and the algorithms drive volatility. And today, there's really no incentive to trade against tomorrow's earnings report. So fingers crossed for the entire stock market that Nvidia does what everyone expects.
Wall Street is concerned about the decision to fire Lisa Cook, mainly because we haven't seen this level of government involvement within Fed decision-making in a very long time, if ever. Yeah, the thing that we're looking at is how the Fed is going to react to that decision itself, right? So if the Fed has a big reaction and people change their opinions next meeting based on this, that's a real concern. When I heard about the decision to fire Lisa Cook, I was not surprised, as we've seen this sort of involvement from the government as of late, and it's been a continuance of behavior like this, right? I was surprised when we heard about the firing of the BLS commissioner. That was really the first signal that Washington gave to the street that they were getting much more involved in the business landscape and the ecosystem of Wall Street, if you will. I think that the push to fire Lisa Cook is just a continuation of that. The concern is it's an escalation from some of the rhetoric that's been going on with the Fed in Washington directly. So there's been, past bouts, we'll call them, between presidents and Fed presidents wanting to lower rates, so on and so forth, to spark growth. But there's never been this level of involvement or visceral behavior between Washington and the Fed. And now the direct firing of Lisa Cook, we view as an escalation of that. So again, we're paying very close attention to the reaction of the Fed. And if any Fed voting members change their mind on what they're going to do based on that decision, I think if we do see a lot of the hawkish members from last meeting flip to dovish because of this, it's a real concern when it comes to the independence of the Fed itself. The stock market's been very complacent when it comes to the recent decisions of government involvement, in our opinion, within markets. So, the government took a recent stake in Intel for 10%. They're now taking 15% of Nvidia and AMD revenue. We haven't seen this done ever, and therefore we thought we would see more of a sell-off or volatility within markets. So markets have been very resilient with some of the decision-making that's come out of Washington that's impacted markets directly. I think the key thing that markets are looking for is how this is going to impact the long-term economic outlook of the U.S. When it comes to the reaction to the bond market with the recent firing of Lisa Cook, yields did go higher. Our view is that overseas and people that are buying U.S. Treasuries now require more yield for not as stable of an environment here in the U.S. Again, the reason why most companies choose to do business here in the U.S. and choose the U.S. as their home is because there's very little government involvement in decision-making when it comes to business. There's a set of rules that everyone must obey by, and the government makes sure that those rules are abided by. But as far as direct interaction with earnings and taking control of companies, things of that nature, the government has stayed out of that for a very long time, right? Well, really ever. And this is the first time that we're seeing government involvement or the commercialization of government. The independence of the Fed has been in threat for some time because of the arguments or the visceral relationship that the government has had with the Fed during this administration. Now, wanting to lower rates and wanting lower interest rates to spur growth, I think any president would want that. But going out of their way to fire a Fed official to try and promote that is a very different level of involvement to push that agenda. And that's our big concern. The long-term effect of government involvement in the Fed in the markets is a concerning one at that. And the reason why is the whole point of doing business here in the US is having an independent Fed and having very little government involvement direct in your business. There's government oversight, of course, and rules that everyone must play by, but there's not direct involvement from the government into business the way there is in China, right? Many times we hear folks on the street criticize the way the Chinese government is run because there's direct involvement from the Chinese government into some of their largest companies. So when we see the US government taking stakes in Intel or demanding 15% of profits from Nvidia and AMD, it's very similar to that, which is concerning over the long run. One concern we have with the actual ability for the president to fire a governor is there's going to be a legal battle that portrays now. And the reason why is Lisa Cook has said, I'm not stepping down. I'm not going to be resigning. So you're going to have this legal battle that's going to be very public, which the market will be paying attention to. And if that heats up and it causes a reaction, a further reaction from other Fed members, that could be concerning, not only for the economy, but market volatility as well. One of the best things about our economy and markets is the Fed has been completely independent and allowed to operate independent for over 100 years, right? And the reason why that's so important is we're all on a level playing field when it comes to business. If we're not on that level playing field anymore and we're having direct involvement from the government, it doesn't end up well. Look at any third world country where there's direct involvement from the government to try and weigh into the economy and their markets.